In January 2015, the first State of the Bay Research Symposium was held at the Alaska Ferry Terminal on Bellingham Bay. The purpose of the all-day event was to enhance communication and coordination between various agencies, organizations, and citizens involved in the protection of Bellingham Bay. The symposium brought together researchers, managers, and interested citizens who are all connected to the future of the Bay. The symposium featured 7 distinct topics, including Bellingham Bay Yesterday and Today, local key issues, challenges, and research needs, physical processes, chemistry and water quality, biological ecosystems, regional research perspectives, and moving forward with limited funding. We will present the State of the Bay Symposium in 7 parts. This is Part 2, Local Key Issues, Challenges, and Research Needs.
Good morning. We're already running a little behind, so I'm going to keep my half an hour discussion of everything I think to about 2 minutes, since I get to speak later this afternoon too. We wanted to move right into a session this morning where we have all of the local governments, and when I say local governments, I'm not referring to the size or the scope of the governance. I'm talking to people that represent people that live here locally. So we have representatives from 4 of those local governments that are going to speak this morning, and they've been asked to address 3 questions, and that's: what's the value and responsibility does your jurisdiction have on Bellingham Bay? What are the key issues and challenges that you're facing? And then what are the information and research gaps that would help us move forward? You know, being an elected official for a number of years now, water has been one of the issues. It's why I ran. This past year, the county council prioritized water in an action plan. We made it our issue of the year, and we managed to push a couple million more dollars into water programs and add a number of staff. And it was a very, we found great support all over where we went. So that was good. One of the other things that the current county council is doing that's different than in the past, I think, is we're reaching out to the Lummi Nation. We've been meeting with a number of the members of the Lummi Nation individually just to get to know each other better, because we certainly understand that their treaty is the backstop. While we all get excited about development and economic development and bringing more people in here, the Lummi Treaty is the backstop that protects the Bay. So we're really reaching out and trying to get to know those folks better. I think I'm just going to introduce people very briefly, tell you who's going to speak and in which order, and I think as they go through, they'll kind of tell you their role in their own government. First up is going to be Mike Hogan from the Port of Bellingham. And then it's going to be followed by Jon Hutchings, who's kind of the water czar for the city of Bellingham. He used to be with the county until the city stole him. And after that, Gary Stoyka, who has become the water czar for the county these days. And then winding up the discussion is Randy Kinley from the Lummi Nation, and you've heard about his years of experience on the LIBC, the Salmon Commission, and just years of just being a fisherman. So we're going to let them each have about 10 minutes. I'm going to kind of be a time Nazi to try to keep them to 10 minutes each, and then we'll hold questions, and hopefully we'll have some time for questions at the end. Mike?
Well, thank you, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity. I think a theme of this presentation that the one thing I want you to walk away with today is the importance of partnerships. You know, if we're going to address the problems in the Bay, and any success that we have had is largely the result of partnerships between the government agencies, between public, between interested citizens, between the Lummi tribe and other interested stakeholders. So. And I also wanted to thank Sue Blake for putting this on and bugging me. The key to a good organizing event like this is getting what you need from the people that are participating, and so Sue did a great job at doing that. So I apologize and thank you for helping put this together. So just real quickly, the Port of Bellingham, we're right at ground zero for water quality in Bellingham Bay. We operate marinas, marine terminals. We manage waterfront property for that delicate balance of industry, recreation, habitat. We also have unique legislative authorities that allow us to do environmental cleanup projects and habitat restoration activities. And in all those activities, public stewardship is a really important part of what we do in managing those resources for this generation and for the next generation. Just to cut right to the chase, I could talk a lot about the challenges we face in Bellingham Bay, but I'm going to start with the answers. From my experience, what's been the key to moving forward and getting things done? Number one is partnerships. The MTCA cleanup projects, there's a lot of historic contamination. Those cleanup projects are a terrific opportunity to, number one, collect data about the bay, wind, wave, all sorts of technical data that informs those cleanup projects, but we can also use for other efforts related to the restoration of Bellingham Bay. Those cleanup projects, they're mainly focused on cleanup, but they also give us an opportunity to meet other objectives, public access, habitat restoration, economic development. So a tremendous opportunity through our MTCA cleanup projects to advance overall restoration objectives in Bellingham Bay. Money is always key. You know, we know a lot of the work that needs to be done, and if only we had the money, we could do a lot more. So dedicated state grants, local funding. One issue, and I'll mention it later, but how do we harness the market forces? You know, it's really, and I'll talk a touch about that later, but really a powerful tool to meeting restoration objectives. When you can integrate those economic objectives, you can really drive restoration. And finally, patience and persistence. I think another theme you'll hear today is that these projects take a long, long time. So just briefly, our historic waterfront economy, you know, it was a heavy industrial working waterfront. At one time, Bellingham had the largest wood shingle mill in the world, the largest salmon cannery mill in the world. It was cranking. This is a photo of the Whatcom Creek Estuary dredging and filling to support industrial activities in the early 1900s. A lot of those activities were really critical at the time. This is building ships to support World War I in Fairhaven. In World War II, we had the largest privately owned wooden shipyard in the United States. A lot of people think of the Central Waterfront, the GP, as kind of the historic industrial center of Bellingham, but if you look at one time, the largest number of people that worked in Whatcom County was down at the Squalicum Creek Estuary, and this is a picture of that wooden shipyard. You can just see a lot of activity, a lot of impacts to our critical ecosystems. A picture of the Central Waterfront, heavy industrial waterfront, a lot of activity going on. This is from 1987. When those activities invariably left, this is a picture of the Squalicum Creek Estuary in 2006. A lot of impacts, historic contamination, and I apologize for running through this real quick, but we have 10 minutes to talk about a lot of problems. This is an important figure to look at. These are a dozen state-listed cleanup sites. I mentioned the MTCA cleanup sites. You can just see the lens of where that contamination exists and where the purview of those cleanup projects goes, pretty much the entirety of Bellingham Bay. So we have this beautiful exterior, Mount Baker in the background, the Puget Sound, but below some major problems. Historically, you know, a loss of over 200 acres of eelgrass habitat, 320 acres of estuary and intertidal habitats, Whatcom, Paddon, Squalicum, estuary habitat within Inner Bellingham Bay, the fragmentation of those nearshore habitats, and sediment contamination. And again, this is one piece of, you know, why there are endangered salmon, but it is an important piece. So if we look at our shorelines, you know, we see debris and concrete bulkheads, you know, dilapidated shorelines. And this is a problem because what our habitat biologists tell us is that intertidal habitat is the highest value for juvenile salmon. So seeking refuge from predators, for feeding, for, you know, a number of activities. This is critical habitat for to meet those salmon restoration objectives. Again, this is just a picture of our current shoreline conditions. And a lot of this, you know, a lot of our central waterfront is fenced off. You don't get down and see this every day, but it is striking when you get down there and take a look at the creosote and other issues. This is in the Squalicum Estuary, a fish passage barrier, old industrial docks that were, met the purposes in the past, but don't meet the needs of today. So restoration challenges, we could go on and on and on, but key to this is it's extremely expensive to fix it. There's limited funding opportunities. The historic contamination presents a big challenge. There's 150 years of owners and operators. A lot of them are gone. Some of them fled to Canada. It's hard to track down who was liable. There's overlapping contamination. These are highly modified systems. Permits take a long time. There's a lot of different regulatory agencies. It's a regulatory gauntlet that you have to go through to get permits. So how do we overcome it? Again, key is partnerships. One of the key partnerships that was put together, Mayor Linville talked about it earlier, was this Bellingham Bay demonstration pilot project. Brought together 14 federal, state, local, and tribal agencies to say, okay, how can we clean up this historic contamination, do it in a way to restore lost habitat, revitalize the land uses, and look at it from a comprehensive bay-wide strategy. And so one project, another partnership through the MRC, this was a project that was locally funded. It was the restoration of Marine Park. This is a great project. Jim Johannesson, actually, is Jim here? This was an idea that Jim said, hey, we should look at a soft bank restoration on Marine Park. And, at the time it was, oh, we can't do that. We need to protect our shorelines, it'll fail. But Jim had the persistence and the science backing it up to wade through those objections. And the port went through and implemented this project, and since that time, this soft bank restoration has been implemented in different places. Last year in Boulevard Park, a great way to do people-friendly and salmon-friendly shorelines. Moving to the Squalicum Creek Estuary, again, this is the picture. This is a project we've been working on for a number of years. Again, state grants and partnerships have been key to this. In 2007, DNR removed about 1,700 tons of creosote pilings from the estuary. And then phase 2 we went through last year, that was the inner estuary. Before it looked something like this. Now it looks like that. Great restoration project. The cleanup projects. Again, I show this figure so you can see the lens. All these cleanup projects through this Bellingham Bay pilot partnership, we've looked at how can we clean up the contamination and restore habitat, meet other objectives. The Whatcom Waterway cleanup is a big project that's going to be moving forward this year. A lot of the pictures that I showed are of the shorelines in the central waterfront. This project will remove bulkheads, soften shorelines. You can look at some of the numbers there, but dramatically improve the habitat quantity, quality, and connectivity. Thank you to the Lummi Nation as we worked through that project, coordinated to meet the tribal concerns on that project, both from a cleanup perspective and then also from impacts to their fishing fleet, and make it overall a much better project. And lastly, I'm getting the time here, so just to talk quickly about harnessing the market. There's a display out, and again, this is what I talked about is just a small sampling of the problems we face in Bellingham Bay. We haven't talked about stormwater, we haven't talked about ocean acidification, we haven't talked about the many problems we face, but as we look to make positive change, harnessing the market, there's a poster out front, I encourage you to read it, but we have a tremendous amount of resources on our central waterfront, including Western Washington's Institute for Energy Technology. We have a 48-inch water main that used to supply water down to the site that could be used to generate hydropower. We have solar projects. We have potential energy from waste heat from the Puget Sound Energy Cogen. So a great laboratory, if you will, where you could educate students, bring in private industries that are focused on clean tech, reduce the amount of CO2 that's being emitted into the atmosphere, and address the long-term impacts of ocean acidification. And just to understand that everything we do on the bay, the salmon restoration is, we have to look at it from a sustainable focus. So, our fisheries are really dependent on meeting these restoration objectives. We can't look at it individually. We have to look at the bay holistically. So with that, I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Jon Hutchings. I'm with the City of Bellingham Public Works, and one of my responsibilities is to help coordinate the various responsibilities that the City of Bellingham has around stormwater, around habitat restoration, around environmental policy, and the like. And I would like to just key off of a few things that have been said already. As how do I advance this, Mike? Just use the button. Yeah. Okay. There we go. By recognizing just once again the historical environment in which these problems in Bellingham Bay originated, and this is a photograph from back in 1912, so a little over 100 years ago, and you can already see railroad tracks, of course, spanning the waterfront, and the city is already quite built out down around the bay. And so that makes you think that there's been 50 or 100 years before that of development to get us to this point. And if we bump forward by about 40 years, bump backwards by about 40 years, we find that development has been driven further down the path of commercial industrial kind of uses, and that same railroad corridor exists. That the water that you saw in the previous photograph has been filled on both sides of Whatcom Creek, and you can see one of those plumes that Bert Weber was referring to emanating off the shoreline, and this is one snapshot in time. One can just imagine how many times that kind of thing reoccurred in Bellingham Bay. That goes to the scope of the problems that Mike talked about just a minute ago, and to the extent of the cleanups that his slide depicted. And I won't dwell on this because it's been covered well already, except to say that we're in a bit of a transition from characterizing the problem and talking about what the appropriate solutions to these problems are, to actually doing something about it. And when you begin to sort of crest that transition, a new set of problems comes before us, and that new set of problems is about having the capacity to get the work done and having the funding to get the work done. And Mike mentioned that one of the port's biggest challenges is just that going forward, and the city, of course, shares that and is working very closely with the port to make sure that we are getting that message to those folks that have bigger pockets. These are state and federal dollars that get directed towards these cleanups. But of course, these cleanups simply restore things to the way we would like them to be, something similar to what they were before the mess was made. Of course, we still have some infrastructure that always exists around an urban core, and what we're learning now is that there's this interaction, this interplay between the locations of nearshore habitat and the ability of salmonids and other species to be able to use the bay for rearing purposes along the lines of what Bert talked about. And the City of Bellingham's commitment to restoration is something that has developed over time. And in speaking with Renee LaCroix, who's the ecosystem and restoration manager for the city, about how that evolved. she noted that there was really in the early 1980s with conversations about salmon recovery that the Nooksack Salmon Enhancement Association got to work focused on restoring Whatcom Creek and sort of galvanized the city's attention to restoring the stream courses, restoring its stream courses. And then in 1999 came the Whatcom Creek fire, which of course burned out a pretty large corridor along Whatcom Creek and drove some restoration projects through a settlement agreement with the pipeline company that created the first real restoration projects in the city and created a source of money by which other restoration projects could be done. And it was that exercise in kicking off those first restorations that created the need for ongoing monitoring, ongoing maintenance, and resulted really in the beginnings of the restoration program as it is today. And then, of course, along the way, the community embraced the real benefits. Science was showing us what the benefits of restored ecosystems, and that goes beyond just the habitat and wildlife that we think of usually when we think of restored habitat, but of course stormwater quality, filtering out the pollutants that are in our stormwater, and mitigating stormwater flows, mitigating flooding, and the human health and welfare aspect of having those open spaces and knowing that those functioning habitats are there. The map that's on this slide appears as a poster out in the poster session. I encourage you to take a look at it. It shows where some key habitat restoration projects along the waterfront that have either recently been done or are being queued up for the upcoming couple of years. And some of those you will recognize. Other ones may be new to you, but they span the course of the waterfront. And they do that because we recognize that there's interconnectedness between these patches of habitat that fish, salmonids, and others need to access. And so a number of studies have been underway to fully characterize the need for that interconnectedness. Where do we place habitat restoration investments? What are our options, and can we place them in a way that we know will be used to allow those species to transit, to find the cover they need, and flourish in this developed environment? And so I just want to bring your attention to Paddon Creek Estuary. So we have these things going on all over the waterfront in collaboration with the port and ecology and others. One of the projects that's being constructed right now is at Paddon Creek, and this photograph shows you Paddon Creek as it looked in 1963, as it looks today. It's a little more cleaned up perhaps today. Some work has been done down there, but there are some problems with hardened shorelines, creosote logs, and deficient vegetation, intertidal vegetation. And so this project is intended to enhance those ecosystem functions and the conditions of the habitat downstream of Harris Avenue, just right up the road that way. And that's what it looked like a couple of nights ago with the trucks out there laying back the banks, installing large woody debris, and the like. So that project is underway now, and you can see it as you head back towards Fairhaven. Stormwater is also an important component of our work, and stormwater is an interesting non-point source problem to consider because it's a cumulative impact problem. That is that it's not enough just to deal with what's happening along the bay. You got to deal with the whole watershed because ultimately that's the source. And in consultation with Bill Riley, who's sitting in the front row here, our city stormwater manager, I learned that the city stormwater improvements began back at about 1980. That is the first real thoughtful investment in stormwater facility upgrades, and then the utility itself was established in 1990 and and rates and charges began, revenues from rates and charges began in 2001. Currently, there's quite a bit of involvement that the city has with the day-to-day involvement with managing stormwater across the city. Everything from facility maintenance to system inspections, illicit discharge inspections, construction inspections, water quality monitoring of the facilities, of the outfalls, managing our own municipal operations to make sure that the city of Bellingham isn't part of the problem, and then the capital retrofits, and making sure that when we dig up a road to repave a road, that we also invest some of those stormwater utility dollars in upgrading the stormwater facilities themselves so that we can better capture and prevent pollution from getting to the bay. And then, of course, there's a whole body of law around construction standards and incentives for low-impact development in our city. This map is also, along with some photographs of the representative projects that are shown by the stars, is also available out there, and Bill will be out there to answer any specific questions about it. But I think what I want you to take away from this is the breadth of the area covered in pink, because that whole area drains into Bellingham Bay. So it doesn't matter if you're all the way up at the headwaters of Squalicum Creek, what you do on your property has potentially some impact on the bay itself. And so our concern is citywide, and the focus of our maintenance and improvement projects has to be citywide. Just to bring you to a couple of, focus on a couple of projects that are right down here. So I talked just now about restoration at Padden Creek. Bill and his staff are working on a low-impact development, a combination of low-impact development solutions and conventional facilities to treat stormwater that runs off of 90 acres above, from Fairhaven, right above Harris Avenue, that would flow otherwise into the Padden Estuary. It's about $1 million project. This is not a huge project. You can see the cost, the magnitude of cost that these kind of retrofits take in a highly developed, dense city like ours. And another recent project that was completed last summer was the Downtown Improvement Gardens. These are infiltration facilities that, if you drive down State Street, you can see them on the at the intersections now. These treat about 80 acres of urban area. They pick up sidewalk and street stormwater runoff, direct them to these rain gardens that have amended material in them, and the water percolates through and takes out the stormwater. Uses bioretention and infiltration, and provides green space and beautification of our downtown area. And I think, to wrap up, we recognize that really a lot has been done by the city of Bellingham, by the port, by everybody who's involved in this stormwater and this restoration work and the cleanup work. We also recognize that we have an awful lot to do, and it is really exciting to be part of that challenge, part of the collaborative process to find ways to leverage our respective resources to solving these problems. So I will be happy to take questions, I think, after everybody's done, and I would encourage you to talk to Bill, talk to Renee, Larry Skolton, our stormwater engineers floating around here somewhere as well, some of our education folks. So thank you very much, and we'll talk. Yeah.
Good morning. I am Gary Stoyka with Whatcom County Public Works. I'm the Natural Resources Manager. It's great to be here. Thanks, Sue, for having me. As was stated earlier by Bert in his presentation, Whatcom County has limited direct jurisdiction over Bellingham Bay in terms of the shoreline, most of it being either in the jurisdiction of the city or the Lummi Nation. We do have some jurisdiction along the shoreline in the north part of the Bellingham Bay and in south part. And the main focus of those areas are to address stormwater concerns through the expansion of our NPDES permit, our National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit. But as it's also been stated several times today, we have a lot of jurisdiction in the Nooksack watershed. And I wanted to talk to you this morning about one particular program that we're really ramping up to deal with the fecal coliform pollution in the Nooksack, and that's our pollution identification and correction program. Let's see here. So what is the problem? Well, fecal coliform pollution is the problem right now, getting into the Nooksack River, which ultimately ends up in Bellingham Bay. Fecal coliform is in the intestines of warm-blooded animals. And although fecal coliform itself is not a major health concern, it is an indicator of other things that are associated with fecal matter that are health concerns. So it's a good indicator of other pathogens that might be in the water. And of course, it can make people sick, those pathogens. And this exposure, it says exposure through direct contact, but also the exposure can be also consuming shellfish that are exposed to those waters, particularly raw shellfish. I guess I should have said here, or maybe I'll get to it in a bit here, but so here's the problem we're seeing here, and here's a graph that I'm bringing to you that is for a sampling location in Portage Bay, and I'm not sure, is this a, there we go. So you can see here you've got time on the bottom here starting in about 1994, and then here's the present day. And right here we're looking at fecal coliform. It's a statistical measure, but essentially we're looking at fecal coliform concentrations. And this is kind of the regulatory line we're trying to hit. So in the 90s, we started having major problems in Portage Bay and other shellfish growing areas, including Birch Bay and Drayton Harbor. And you can see we had these really high numbers in the mid 90s. That prompted the formation of shellfish protection districts. The county has 3 of them right now. As I just stated, Drayton Harbor Shellfish Protection District deals with Drayton Harbor, Birch Bay deals with Birch Bay, and Portage Bay deals with what's called Portage Bay, but it's part of Bellingham Bay right here off of the tip of the Lummi Peninsula between Portage Island and the Lummi Peninsula. And in the 90s, when this problem occurred, everybody got into action and started addressing it. I would say the biggest thing that probably happened during this time was the Dairy Nutrient Management Act that the state passed to start regulating dairies more heavily. The county did get involved also with some other land use actions. But you can see things cleaned up until about 2004. We were way below the regulatory limit, and things looked pretty good until about 2008 and 9. And then we started going up, creeping up, and just in the last year we've shot above the line. And that has caused, a lot of concern for a lot of people, in particular the Lummi Nation. Just recently, just in the last couple of months, this is their main shellfish growing area. They have put in place a voluntary shellfish closure, so they've stopped harvesting from that, and that is just anticipation of an official shellfish closure, which is probably going to happen next month. So this area will be closed to shellfish harvesting, not year-round, but seasonally. So that's a huge deal for everybody, but it's a huge deal for Lummi Nation. Whatcom County is really taking this seriously and working with our partners to try to address this. We're working under what's the Washington Shellfish Initiative and what's called the Whatcom County or the Whatcom Clean Water Program, and you can see it consists of a whole variety of tribal, federal, state, and local interests that are working together to address all of the problems we're having with fecal coliform in our shellfish growing areas. So the PIC program, P-I-C, it stands for Pollution Identification and Correction. And it's exactly what it sounds like. We're going to try to identify the sources of pollution, and then try to fix those problems. So what are the main sources of bacteria we're looking for? Well, there's 2 main sources. They're both actually the same, but we kind of separate it into 2 categories: human sewage and animal waste. And human sewage, you can get them from treatment plants, municipal treatment plants, but our concern in most of these areas is on-site sewage systems throughout most of the rural areas. And also under animal waste, livestock, domestic pets, and urban wildlife are all considered sources of the problem. So how do we identify the pollution? Well, we need to do, and we have been doing, and all of our partners have been doing for many years, but we're going to be increasing our level of monitoring out in all of these watersheds. What we need to do is basically start working your way up the watershed, and the Nooksack watershed is a big watershed, so we're taking a lot of samples to kind of back our way up the watersheds to try to figure out areas that are having the problems. Figuring out drainage characterization, and then starting with looking at land uses and drive-by surveys to see, okay, we have this area, this drainage basin has high numbers. What can we see out there? Oh, this one has livestock. These might have some septic systems, and kind of start following up on those. So that's the identification part of it. Then comes the pollution correction part of it, and there are several components, as you can see there. A big one is community outreach. Some people don't know that there's a problem. Some people don't know what the causes of the problem are. Community outreach and public engagement is a big part of the correction, because before people can do anything about things, they need to know that there's a problem and how they could be contributing to that problem. Some of the things we're doing with that are, direct landowner contact, workshops. We're going to be doing some more work through the media, websites. We've done some surveys out there. We really need to engage the community and get people on board with this. The next step there is technical and financial assistance. We have made a very close partnership with the Whatcom Conservation Districts, who are the experts locally in farming practices, and we're trying to put people in touch that have livestock with the conservation district. Also, we have our health department is the main venue by which we are engaging septic system owners. And then also county staff are just also dealing with directly with landowners, dealing with the other issues such as pet waste campaigns or urban wildlife problems. And some of these programs offer financial assistance to help people deal with correcting these problems. And you can see the third bullet there is regulatory backstop. You certainly need to have a regulatory backstop, because some people are not going to respond to these other things, and that is a component. However, we try to go through the process. We first try to engage people, try to get them the help they need, but if they are not going to correct the problem, we have to have a regulatory backstop. And I just emphasize that you can't get there entirely with regulatory measures, because it is very expensive and very time consuming. The way you're going to get the watershed cleanup is primarily through engagement and voluntary efforts, but you need that backstop to make sure people follow through. What kind of solutions are we looking for out there? Well, with human sewage, it's primarily we have our health department has requirements that people have their septic systems inspected, and that should identify problems where there's failing septic systems. And if there are failing septic systems, people need to get those corrected. It's their responsibility to make sure they operate correctly. And there are programs available that offer low interest loans to people who are financially strapped, who may not have the resources. Some of these fixes can be in the multiple tens of thousands of dollars. Other things that we could do in the farming community, this is where the Whatcom Conservation District will come in. We want to farming practices. We may need to install grass strips or buffers or setbacks to help filter out the contamination that are coming from these properties. Here's a typical situation. We want to keep the cattle out of the stream by fencing them out of the stream, and this is where the conservation district can offer a lot of assistance. Possibly doing off-site water in storage areas, keeping livestock off of these very wet areas during times when they're wet. Helping people, reminding people about pet waste, putting in pet waste stations or other things that are a component of this. Urban wildlife is an interesting problem. The more food that's available, if you feed your dog and you leave the dog dish outside, that invites raccoons and other animals. If you don't secure your garbage, that invites an overpopulation of some of this urban wildlife that can lead to fecal coliform problems there. So that is a direct outreach to landowners. Community outreach. Like I have stated earlier, we're doing surveys, websites. We're going to be using the media more. We're going to be doing all kinds of direct landowner contact with through the conservation district and through the county directly. Again, there are lots of financial technical assistance the conservation district can provide to landowners with livestock. They do farm plans for people to tell them how to operate their farms in a way that doesn't lead to pollution. And of course, they have many financial assistance programs that can lead to cost share, most of which can pay for 75% of these fixes. And of course, the tool in the toolbox there is the regulatory backstop. We need to have that. If people don't comply and there is a problem, we will refer them to the appropriate agency. If it's a dairy, that'll probably be the Department of Agriculture. If it's a non-dairy livestock, it'll probably be our own Planning and Development Services Department through our county ordinances. And if it's a violation of water quality, it would be the Department of Ecology. And of course, if it's septic system, it would be our health department. What are our key challenges? Well, non-point source pollution is hard. Finding sources is not easy. You've got a huge watershed. In most cases, you don't have a nice pipe coming out that you work your way up the stream and say, aha, we found it. It's a little bit coming from here. It's a little bit coming from there. And those just take a lot of monitoring and a lot of work to work your way back up the basin. Private property issues. We can't go on private property without permission. And so unless we know of an egregious problem there. So those are issues. Weather patterns. My experience is, if we have a really wet spring, you're going to have problems. That's a time when livestock landowners are looking to get their animals back on pasture. It's when dairy lagoons are getting full and need to be emptied. And if we have a really wet spring, it really puts a crunch on things. We have certainly a segment of our population that is very resistant to being told what to do on their land. And some of those people believe that, that we've been farming like this forever. And so those are hardened positions that are sometimes hard to get through to. And also we do have some transboundary sources. Some of these watersheds extend north of the border into Canada, and the water doesn't come across the border crystal clear and clean. It comes through with already fecal coliform in it, and it doesn't get any better along the way. Research needs, I would say, determining sources. Determining sources is, like I said, is a big research problem. One of the issues is that people have talked about, DNA sampling and that sort of thing. It's not as easy as it sounds. The science is really not there on the DNA sampling for many reasons, so that's not easy to determine, and I can get into that later. Effectiveness of BMPs, which BMPs are effective. And of course, understanding the system better. We have watersheds where the fecal coliform peaks during high rain events, and then we have other drainages where it peaks during low rain events. So understanding the different drainages and the inputs that are coming from there. So those are our major research needs. I just want to emphasize that the county is taking this seriously, and the county council and the executive have really upped the program this year, and we are bringing on really what amounts to about 4.3 FTEs between the Public Works Department, the Planning Department, and the Conservation District. So we're really upping our game to address this issue and turn this around and get the shellfish beds open and get the water quality back down to where it needs to be. And with that, I think I'm probably out of time, so I will go ahead and thank you.
I want to thank you and the panelists for coming up and talking about all the concerns and issues
that are facing us today and the future generations. And from the tribal perspective, people have to understand and learn where we're coming from, what our values are. Our values started out like my brother was talking, Richard sang the song, how important and how everything is connected to us. And trust us, we're not the enemy, because the way we are taught is that we think about 7 generations out. And geez, here I am, 60 years old, you know, and all the stuff that the gentleman talked about, most of it I lived through, all of that stuff. And, you know, it kind of makes me think back on what is it I value the most. And I value the most that what I lived, that we can go back, and that's not very long ago, to let my grandson fish like we did. Let my granddaughters, grandkids, as we say in tribal country, when the tide's out, the table's set. That's what I value. We value. And, you know, I get caught up in all these acronyms and stuff that it's hard to comprehend on all the stuff that we're doing, and trying to get to a common solution without studying the damn thing to death. Because, you know, I listen to all these gentlemen, it's no fault of theirs. All these processes that were started was because of the tribe. You know, and people said in 1973, the boat decision, the sky was falling. It wasn't about the fish, and now you sit back and you think about it. That became an environmental law. And the reason it became an environmental law is because the tribe got to sit at the table. The tribes came in understanding how everything is connected. And I don't know how's your pointer work? There you go. You ask the jurisdiction, this is all ours. Any place the water runs is ours as the Lummi Nation, from Fraser River all the way down to the environments of the Seattle. That's what our usual and the custom fishing is. People have to understand that what we're looking at is what our self-sustaining way of life. That's our values. That means that from my view anyhow, is that we want to fish, be able to go out and set a net, catch a fish, starting in March and close in February. And then we want to be able to go and dig clams starting in June when we start harvesting, because everything is tied to our salmon ceremonies, so that we can turn around just like the farmers. Everybody has ceremonies, you know. I don't know where they want to go to. But people have to understand that the tribes want to work with you, have been working with you, forcing the issue since '73. I grew up on the river. We grew up on the river, Richard and I. We can remember when Whatcom County was the largest agriculture county. We grew up with what we called the peace lime. We grew up with the carrots coming down the river. And at the same time, we can remember when we used to drink the water out of the Nooksack. Bert was talking about the log jam. The log jam was diverted by our farmer in charge, because the farmers wanted that land on the west side, agriculture. And now, you know, over my dead body, that I would see that river diverted back to the Red River, because we don't even have the water quality controlled right now. That's why we're fighting right now. I heard our friend talk about the pick. You know, Lummi has to force things to get done. And then the other side always thinks they can run to their legislator and legislate the problem. That doesn't work, because then that forces us to go to the federal government, where we want to sit down and make sure that you understand where we're coming from and be willing to work and solve the problem. And no fault to these gentlemen, don't create no more processes. We're studying and studying and studying. From our values is that you don't have to study. Use common sense. How would you like to be sitting there at the bottom end of the I always say shit flows down, and we're at the bottom end and we get it. In our lifetime right there, my cousin and I, we used to call that the jump. We used to turn around and use 35-foot staking poles when we would set our nets out there around there. Now our people go out there with 12 and 14-foot staking poles and can't catch any fish. Right here when Bert was talking about this riprap, we didn't ask for that riprap. Back in the heydays, of the BIA, in their infinite wisdom, put their water and sewer right here. And it wasn't to benefit us, it was to benefit these people right here. And because of the erosion right there, and because of the water and sewer line right there, then we had to put riprap. Realizing now we should have soft armoring there, because of the ESA. ESA came in and turned everything up on its head, because the farmers, the builders, everybody else thought there was an 800-pound gorilla coming to force you guys to do the right thing. And then all of a sudden it became a big joke, because the only pressure it put on was the tribes, because of all the things that these gentlemen talked about. Because of water quality, water quantity, the habitat. And what we're looking for from our tribe is that, yes, it's going to take time, but we have to understand each other. When you're doing something, you have to have the tribes there. Because if you don't have the tribes at the beginning, the only place we can turn is to the core. And understand the core carries a big club. EPA carries a big club. NOAA carries a big club. When he was talking about the water quality going down, that's because we got such smart people like Jeremy that we forced the issue. We literally went to EPA and say, look, and then EPA runs to the ecology. That's the way the system works. And so then we had good clean water down around our shellfish beds, which is about, oh God, I can't remember how many acres, but you guys put out, I think $1 million or $7 million, Jeremy, what was it? When we had to close our shellfish beds there. And see, look, here we sit at the bottom of the hole. Everybody gets compensated. Everybody gets money to do the damn right thing. And our people sit there and say, what? Then we go up and we pick on Jeremy. What the hell's going on? It's not, we don't have a level playing field here, because the process is set up for political. We need you guys to get back and elect leaders, because if we're waiting for process and money, it's never going to happen. I work in the partnership, I can remember when we first started the partnership, we had it down at Shill Show. Geez, there must have been over 1,000 people there. To me, it reminded me of seagulls. They're all swooping around and they're looking for money, And I've been in the partnership I don't know how many years. And now you go to a meeting and look at how many partners that are on the executive board did roll over and leave. Look at our governor. We got to tie our governor into this. When Gregoire was there, she opted out when she started the process. We lost our best friend, Billy Frank, that was there for us. But people have to understand, and just think and look in the mirror. What would you want? You guys want a healthy, vibrant economy. We want a healthy, vibrant fishery and a way of life that was guaranteed to us under the Treaty of 1855. People don't realize that at one time this was all ours. And that's what we, in good intentions, our leaders signed that treaty. We didn't ask to get put here. They put us there. They wanted to make farmers out of us. But no, we wouldn't. We're fishermen. We're the best fishermen there is. That's why we're good at what we do. They say Swedes, Norwegian, and everything like that. But you got to remember, Lummi's the best, biggest, and the best because we're one of the only tribes that sit right here. We were the only tribe that started right here. We taught the reef netters, but there's not one Lummi out there fishing. We taught the reef netters on the islands, but there's not an Indian out there because we were crowded out. And the only source we had to go to in '73, which was the Bolt decision. And then we start sitting down and thinking, how do we protect our people? We passed legislation. We're the most conservationist people there is. We turned around and we closed the season up there in 1977, 6. We literally stopped our people from fishing. But still we had sportsmen out here, and that's no fault of the sportsmen. It's just political management. Now we're in such conservation measures that We don't even have a healthy, natural, wild stock in the Nooksack. Our chums are the last real stock, but now that's even getting decimated because of the conditions up in the watersheds. We're here to make sure that you can hear where we're coming from and engage us and realize that you need us. I heard our friend talking about changing CCM. Is that what that thing is where you change from the beach out? They came to us and they asked us to support what they want right over here. And we did. But then when something else comes up, we're the bad guys. But we're used to the bad guys, what the hell? But we were here as stewards of the land. And we're asking you, please, with an open hand, open heart, and open mind, listen to us. Even though I don't have a PhD, we're pretty smart. But also remember, science will only get you so far, because you got to be willing to use that science. And remember, 20 years ago, them same scientists told us to take all the woody debris out of the river. Now them same scientists are telling us to put it back. So always remember is that you want to do something that reflects what you want. And please don't force the tribe into a predicament where we have to use our biggest hammer, and that's the court. Because then it becomes a winner and a loser. And understand with a warning, based upon what we're saying, there's not enough coming down the river. And when people start punching little tiny wells, always remember it's connected. Because as we know, everything is connected here. And in closing, I think it's important that understand that when they were talking about this drift right here, that's where I grew up, right under Treaty Rock. You walk over there now, it's all sand. You got trees there. That's what we're trying to fight for. So we can't even fish in our damn river. All that sediment coming down. That's why I was saying back in 1968, 69, when we used 35-foot poles, there was a road right here called, our house right here on the point there. We used to line that up with the trestle in it, Richard. Yeah. We could just like this, and we could take a pole like that, drop it down, and that's where we would end with our lead, and then our pot would be over. And now you can't even go out there. We had a study over here that showed, I can't remember how many trucks and trailers coming down every year of siltation. But yet, in infinite wisdom, people think this is the only habitat there is. People talk about private property. What about our property? What about our rights? That's not saying that we're not willing to sit down and talk, but come talk to us. If we're really serious about this stuff, we would sit down and say, okay, if we have a problem in this reach, let's identify it. And it's not about poking anybody in the eyes. Let's just really seriously fix the problem, because if you don't, think about what you're putting on the table for your grandkids. That's where we're coming from. That's why I'm glad my nephew's here, because he grew up, he fished with me all his life. And then when I was thinking that picture, that World War II, when I can't remember what Bellingham shipyard, Kelly's, I think if I remember right, Kelly's dad's boat was built there. Pete Zwanich's boat was built there. The Glenovich's boats were built there. See, that was in our lifetimes. So don't think that it's going to take 150 years to fix, because it didn't happen that long ago. Yes, them are problems, but we're looking at trying to solve these problems in our lifetime. If it's through mitigation, let's have at it. Support us on how we can get to where we're at. We're looking at hatcheries, because right now the environment can't stand the population that's needed to solve our healthy economy. And don't look at the casinos either. Casinos provide another mechanism to support our people that the federal government is not doing on our way of health or education. So when we get into these discussions, even though people think that the tribes are so wealthy with casinos, that's a bunch of BS, because it's all spent back into making sure our people are taken care of. Because like my nephew said, When I grew up and Richard grew up, we were 500.
Yeah.
Now we're over 5,000. And that's my nephew's responsibility to make sure that he sees in the future how we take care of each other. And I open the dialogue, hope the dialogue goes on, and we take and really serious, consciously sit down and talk about resolution and not creating more process, because we need to solve them. Again, I want to thank you for the opportunity, and always remember, we're not the enemy. Haishka.
You've been watching a presentation from the State of the Bay Symposium held in January 2015 in Bellingham, Washington. If you'd like to see the other 6 presentations from this symposium, please visit the City of Bellingham's YouTube site, www.youtube.com/cityofbehamwa.